12 noon on Wednesday, which means it's time for this week's episode of Ask the Instructor. My name is John Christmer. The show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate, and we're here every Wednesday, 12 noon Eastern Time, helping you understand the technical side of the real estate industry. And what we're talking about today is a topic known as investing. And not just investing, but investing in your future, because that's really what you're doing with an investment. Investment, there's no immediate returns typically with an investment. This is a return that you're getting in the future. So what we're talking about today is the best ways to invest in your future, ways that are going to set your tomorrows up better than your todays, better than your yesterdays. And so this is something that you really have to be intentional about if you want to have your future set up for success. So that's what our topic is today, investing in your future. I'm John Carissimo. This show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate. You're watching Ask the Instructor.
You are watching
Ask the Instructor. Absorb the knowledge. Become the expert.
Hey, welcome back to this week's episode of Ask the Instructor. My name is John Carissimo. The show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate. We're here every Wednesday, 12 noon Eastern Time, helping you understand the technical side of the real estate industry. And what we're talking about today is investing. And not just any type of investing, but investing in your future. Now, when I say investing, you might think about buying property. You might think about buying stocks. You might think about these things it is that you could buy that will provide you with some sort of cash flow, some sort of money, some sort of something. And the biggest investment that you could make, it's something that no one could ever take away. It's not stocks, it's not Bitcoin, it's not real estate. Real estate is not the best investment. The best investment, the number one investment, is in yourself. And look, I'm not here trying to sound cheesy or cliche or whatever the case may be, but when you really think about an investment that you make in yourself, that is something nobody can take away. Whether this is knowledge it is that you're gaining, whether this is eating healthier, whether this is exercising, or whatever it is that you're doing to make your tomorrow better than your today. You know, a lot of people are looking for, what stock do I buy? What type of real estate is going to be the best investment? And really the best investment, your investments are only going to be as good as you picking them, as the knowledge it is that you have, as the capacity that you have to choose these investments. So before you make any other investment, you need to invest in yourself. And there's a lot of ways it is you can invest in yourself. And we could break this up into your physical well-being, your mental well-being, your mental capacity, your knowledge, so to say, your emotional. That's a big part of this as well. And look, if you've been struggling with maybe being a little anxious, a little depressed, a little uncertain, something I always like to ask people when we're really trying to figure out, okay, where are you going, is where do you see yourself in 5 years? People talk about this as your 5-year plan. And where do you see yourself 5 years from now? What are you doing? What do you look like? What does your typical day look like? What do you own? Who are the people that are around you? What is that you're doing? And if your 5 years, if you don't really even think about this much, this needs to be something that you think about on a daily basis of not necessarily trying to figure out every day what you want 5 years to look like, but figuring out what you want that 5 years away from now to look like, and then every single day you're thinking about that goal. You're thinking about that achievement it is that you want to make, and you're making conscious efforts every single day, little by little, to move towards that goal. Now, going back to investing in your future. You've got to have that finish line figured out. This is, and it's not really a ultimate finish line, but you want to think about that as, what is this finish line that you want to cross? What is this obstacle that you want to overcome? Where ultimately do you want to be, and how do you move towards that every single day? So it really starts first with understanding, okay, where is it that I want to be? And so there's something I like to always reference, and it's something from Rich Dad Poor Dad. He's got a whole book on it. It's called the Cash Flow Quadrant. And the Cash Flow Quadrant is really cool because what it does is it breaks down the 4 ways to make money, either as an employee, as a self-employed person, as a business, or as an investor. Now, if you're in this role here as an employee, this is very different than all 4 other quadrants. Same thing as if you're self-employed. That's different than owning a business, and that's different than being an investor. So each one of these ways are very isolated from each other for what it takes to actually make money. Now, this employee role, this typically appears as the most stable. It's the most consistent. This is really where you have the least control over your future. It's not necessarily a bad thing. You want to align yourself in this quadrant with what is it that you could do that's going to help you move into these other quadrants, that's going to help you really even maybe also do these things. So let's say that you're thinking about starting a real estate career, and currently you have some sort of full-time job, and you're looking to start real estate part-time. So you're currently in the E quadrant, in the employee quadrant, and you're looking to also be in the self-employed quadrant. Now, in the employed quadrant, in the employee quadrant, this is the case where you're the most told what to do, where you have to do the things it is that you're told, otherwise you lose that job, you get fired. And there's usually some sort of degree of, thinking on your own and having to solve your own problems, but ultimately it's told what your goal is, what that company expects out of you. Now, in the self-employed, and this is where you start to have to shift your think of what it is that you're doing. So this is very much based around yourself. And this is where it's really important that you're in really the peak state. You're in not only a peak mental state, but your physical state as well, because that's really what drives. This is what carries your body around every day is this. And if you're having trouble just moving around, how are you going to go places when you have trouble just moving around in the first place? So if you want to go places, then that little bit of movement is really going to help get your blood flowing, get more oxygen getting to your brain, which allows it to operate at a higher level. So let's say you're starting to work in real estate part-time, or that's your goal, that you want to start out maybe not a 5-year plan, but a 5-month plan. That you're shortening this cycle down because you want to start working in real estate. You don't want to walk away from your job. And we did an episode recently about things you should do before you quit your job. And you don't have to quit your job to practice real estate. You do not have to work full-time in real estate. There's tons of brokers out there that'll work with part-time agents. There are some that only work with full-time agents, but for the majority of them, they're usually going to work with part-time agents as well. And if you're having trouble finding any of that, give us a call. We can help you out with that. So moving into this self type of quadrant, this is where it's more about you. And this is where you've got to invest in yourself. You're not ready at this point to invest in other things, because if you really want to make it into this I quadrant, if you want to be an investor, if you have some sort of portfolio manager, you're not an investor. You might have money invested, but that person that's managing your portfolio, they're really the investor. When you have other people managing your money, they're taking a fee, and that's going to eat away where you might not even be making enough money to keep up with this, to keep up with inflation and so on and so forth. So don't even think about this. Really, if we're progressing through the quadrants, this is the last quadrant it is that you get to, because really you need the most amount of money. You need the largest sum of money to be able to make money solely off of investing. even if you're getting a 10% return on investment, if you want to make $100,000 in a year with a 10% return on investment, which is already a pretty steep ROI, it's definitely achievable, it's definitely possible, but you're probably not getting a 10% return on investment with a portfolio manager that's managing your money for you. Because even if it was a 10%, they're taking a cut on top of that. So if you want to just a 10% return on investment, which is again already asking for a lot, and just to make $100,000, that means you have to have $1 million of cash invested to get a 10% return on investment. So this is a great place to eventually get to, but first you have to raise that capital. You have to accumulate that $1 million. And you could talk about compounding, and yeah, if you want to invest over 40 years and 40, 50 years later, eventually have $1 million. If we take $1 million and spread it out over like 50 years, that's not much money at all. I think that's going to boil down to like $2,000. Don't quote my math on that, but it's not a lot of money per year. So in order to raise that capital, these two are going to be where you have the largest opportunity for exponential growth. In the employee quadrant, you will not have exponential growth. In the investing quadrant, you will not have an exponential growth. This is where your growth is going to look more like this. It's more flat. Whereas in the self-employed, as well as in the business quadrants, you could really have this exponential growth. And especially if we're focusing on this here. So again, maybe you're starting real estate part-time. And even if you're full-time in real estate, you're still in that self-quadrant until you start to employ other people. As you start to employ other people, that's where you start to move into the business quadrant, where you're no longer just a self-employed person, you're running a business. But let's rewind back to the self here. So before you could be an investor, and we get a lot of people that come to us and say, hey, I want to invest in real estate. Can you teach me how to do that? We could. But do you have millions of dollars to invest at this point? Do you even have a couple $100,000 to invest in this point? And with only $100,000, even if you have $100,000 to invest, $100,000 of cash set aside, with a 10% return on investment, which again is asking for a lot, that's $10,000. Maybe you're only getting a 5% return on investment. That's only $5,000, which is nice on top of being an employee. If you're already making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year as an employee, yeah, an extra $5,000, $10,000 is nice, but you could probably already get that extra $5,000, even $10,000 maybe just in bonuses from being an employee. Whereas we shift into the self-quadrant here, where you're self-employed. If you're doing this part-time in addition to that $40,000, $50,000 it is you're making a year, you don't have to have hardly any money compared to maybe the $100,000 or $1 million you're investing as an investor. You could have, maybe $1,000 to get your startup costs and get yourself running and get yourself out the door, able to sell real estate. And you could sell one property, a $300,000 property at a 3% commission, and a $300,000 property is about an average price sale in Hillsborough County. So you take an average price sale in Hillsborough County, where we're located here in Tampa. Maybe it's a little bit more in your market, maybe it's a little bit less, but let's say it's $300,000. That's $9,000 at a 3% commission. And this is, again, where you have that potential for exponential growth, because you could take very little startup capital, very little money. Now, what is the real cost here? The real cost here is your time. So this is taking your time. Because if you're working this part-time in addition to what it is that you're doing full-time, yeah, you've got to carve out time on the weekends and in the evenings and maybe before work to really get this business off the ground, to really turn it potentially into a business. Because maybe ultimately your 5-year goal is to have a whole real estate team, maybe even have some real estate investments. Well, the question now is, how do you get there? You can't just say that you want that. That's a great place to start, is at least have that vision. Because there are a lot of people that don't have that 5-year vision of where they want to be in 5 years, or maybe they don't have it clearly and specifically defined. So you want to figure that out first and foremost. And maybe that involves you owning some investment properties. Maybe that involves you generating income from real estate. Now you're going to be able to make income off of real estate a lot easier with a real estate license than you would investing, because with investing, I mean, yeah, maybe you're able to borrow some money and use other people's money and all that other stuff. But even with $100,000 invested, and that's a $100,000 property, at 10%, that's 10 grand. You could knock that out with one sale. And even just working part-time, you could probably knock out 3, 4, maybe even 5 or 6 sales in a year once you really start to get things dialed in. Now, you want to do more than that? That's maybe where you do have to drive more attention to this. Or maybe, again, it is where you start running it more like a business and you start building out a real estate team, where you start recruiting some other agents that are going to help you accomplish this common 5-year goal to get to that short-term finish line it is that you have here. But again, to start out, it's going to take a time investment. The money investment is very minimal. Usually the things that are going to require more time require less money to start up. I mean, how much is it going to cost you to go be an employee somewhere? Basically nothing. Maybe you go to school and get a college degree, but is that really even necessary in 2019 where we're at right now? Maybe if you want to be in a certain profession, like maybe an attorney or a doctor or something like that, then you got to go to school for like a decade or 12, 13 years. But in real estate, I mean, we'll get you through that pre-licensing course in 2 weeks for a couple $100. Now, that's not the end of your learning. That's just the beginning. That's just what gets you the license that lets you have the seat at the table. And now the real learning starts, where you start to learn how to practice real estate, what to do. And that's where your post-licensing comes in, your sales training and all that other stuff that's really going to help you take the most advantage of this time it is that you're investing into real estate. And now as you shift over here, on this side, for businesses and investing, this takes more money. Whereas over here, as an employee or a self-employed person, this is taking time. So here, you're trading your time for money. Now, as an employee, your time might not always equal the amount of money it is that you're receiving, or the amount of effort it is that you're putting in here may not always equal the income that you should be earning. But in the self-employed quadrant, this is where you start to take more control, where you could really start to warp and bend time to your favor, to where you're able to maybe work a little bit more efficiently or maybe work a little bit harder, and that results in a higher output of money. And then as you start to reinvest in yourself, and again, you start to build this into something bigger than yourself, that's where you start to become a business. And this is where, if you really take advantage of this again, you could really have exponential output from what it is that you're creating here. And then once you really have all this money being generated, you get this capital generating, that's where you can really start to make a dent with investing in real estate. Because look, if you have one property, if you have a single property, and you're just trying to rent it out, you're not going to get a huge return on your investment. Now, if you have a single property and you're trying to flip it, that's where things get a little bit more dangerous. It becomes a little bit more risky, because if there's price corrections in the market, prices might be going up, but prices go down. If you were counting on selling that property for a higher price and flipping it, that's where you put yourself in a position where you're losing money. And that's where really you're not so much as an investor as you are being a self-employed or being a business of reselling properties, which is essentially what we're doing with a real estate license for other people in the first place. So we really could take the risk away from it if we're just helping other people buying and selling properties. Because these aren't our properties, we're not holding them. Yeah, we might be able to make more money if we're just flipping it on our own here, but this takes away a significant degree of the risk because it's not our property. We're just taking properties that other people own, helping them sell it, and earning a commission in the process. Ultimately, the best way to invest in real estate is through long-term rentals. But you do that with one single property. Let's say you take $100,000 you invested in one single property, or maybe even you're able to buy 2 properties with that $100,000. You might only be making like $50 or $100 a month. If you read some of the Rich Dad Poor Dad books, I know I'm referencing this whole cash flow quadrant here, and he talks about, his first rental property only making him $50 a month, which is great. He's making $50 a month. It's positive. He's in the green. But then what happens if this property, the tenant stops paying their rent and you got to evict them? What happens if there's some sort of change in the market? So right now in Tampa, they're building apartments like there's no tomorrow. And that's going to have a significant impact in the rental market because there's so much inventory of rental properties available. And that's going to really put a squeeze on how much it is that you could actually rent a property for. It's going to take a long time for things to catch up, but eventually there's going to be some correction on the rental side of things as well. And any type of any one of these quadrants has risk. If you're an employee and you think you don't have risk, what's the risk of that company going out of business? How many businesses have been well-known businesses? I mean, I drove by a mall the other day and saw what used to be a Sears sign taken down. You could still see the outline of the Sears up there. There were some people at some time that thought, oh, Sears would never go away. But they have. Things change all the time, so any one of these quadrants have risk. It's just in these two quadrants here, in a self-employed position or a business type of position, you take more control of that risk. And when you can control the risk, when you're managing this risk, that's where you could kind of manipulate things. Now, these, again, take more time and money, especially if we're dealing on the business side of things. But as an employee, you really don't have much control of whether or not that company stays in business. Now, maybe it's a very small organization, and so your contribution is a very large part of that business. But that doesn't mean it can't go out of business. That doesn't mean it's immune from changes in the market. Maybe on the investing side of things here, you can control it a little bit with the real estate and you owning the real estate and whatnot, but you can't ultimately control the market. And you can't control the market here, but you can control how you respond to that market. And you're able to control this in a much higher degree than you could as an employee or as an investor. So look, wanting to ultimately become an investor in real estate or an investor in anything is a noble goal. That is a great thing to have on your 5-year, maybe even 10-year plan, your long-term type of plan. But if you don't have the capital yet to invest, and again, to do it at a level that you've got enough money where you're able to get a significant amount of money back. Because if you've got $100,000 invested, if you take $100,000 and invest it and you're having to manage this as well, to squeeze out that 10% return on investment, is that really worth the $10,000 a year? Or was it better spent if you're getting $10,000 per commission and you just do 4 of those in a year? You do 4 of those $10,000 commissions as a self-employed person on top of what you're currently doing. These commissions alone are 40 grand, plus whatever it is that you're already making as an employee. And again, that's where you might start to see it's time to make that shift. We talked about a couple weeks ago or last week or whenever it was we covered it, should I quit my job? And it's going to seem obvious when it's time that, okay, my time's better spent here. I no longer want to be in this position. I want to move fully into this. Maybe you're already into that mindset that, hey, look, I want to make real estate my full-time thing. I'm just not ready to do that yet. Again, that's where you could ultimately make this transition over the long run by shifting from an employee to a self-employed person. And then eventually maybe even thinking bigger. Maybe starting your own brokerage. So rather than you just being a single independent contractor under your current broker, maybe you're ready to eventually make that shift into running your own brokerage and building out a team of agents. And this is where it's going to take more money to do that. I mean, to start a brokerage, the costs are going to be higher. There's already costs just to get the license in the first place. But then you've got to have an office. So in Florida, it requires all brokers have office space. There needs to be an office if you want to have a brokerage. Doesn't necessarily have to be anything huge or big, but you do have that requirement now for office space, so that's adding to the cost of this. You're going to have maybe greater advertising costs because now you're maybe not just advertising to buy and sell real estate, to help people buy and sell real estate, but now you're maybe advertising to recruit agents to your brokerage and have training programs in place to get these agents set up. And this is, again, where it's going to cost more money to get into this, but I would say to do that even before you start trying to get into the investing side of things. Because again, as an employee, you could maybe increase over time how much money it is that you're making. You should be able to. As an investor, your investments will probably appreciate over time. You might be able to increase the cash flow you're getting over time, but you're not going to get exponential return on your investment as an employee or as an investor. If you really want to make significant changes in your life, you've got to be in the right vehicle. You've got to be in the right quadrant to do this here. As a self-employed person, this is where you do have that immense potential. Now, eventually you'll get to that point where you might start to level off, but then when you maybe turn this now into a business where you're bringing other people into the situation, you're starting your own brokerage, that's where you reactivate that exponential capacity here. But you might be Down here currently not making much now, haven't sold any properties yet. As you start to sell some, you start to get the hang of it. You start to really max this out. I mean, maybe you're able to sell 20, 30, 40, 50 properties as a single person in a year. Maybe not even that much. Maybe at some point you start to bring on an assistant, or you bring on a buyer's agent, or you bring on somebody that's going to coordinate your transactions, a transaction coordinator. And as you start to do that, that now increases your potential where you're able to activate that exponential growth. So if you want to make significant changes in your life, you're not going to be able to make significant changes quickly as an employee or even as an investor. These are very slow to change, very slow to respond to changes it is that you make. You might go to school for like 12 years to go become a doctor. That's a very slow change to get a good amount of income. But now you're having to pay back all that student loan debt. And as an investor, over time, yes, your investments will appreciate. There's a whole idea of compounding interest, but you probably don't want to wait 12 years of going to school to make a decent living. And you probably don't want to wait 50, 60 years to have a decent amount of money from your investments. If you want to speed up this process and again, go for the exponential growth, that's going to be through the self-employed and business quadrants. And again, this book that this whole cash flow quadrant is coming from here is Rich Dad Poor Dad, the cash flow quadrant. It's something I definitely recommend you take a look at because it really kind of shows you and it helps you understand these different ways of making money. And again, as an investor now, just because you're not ready to invest hundreds or millions of dollars into properties so that way you can have a significant amount of cash flow kicked off from these properties, you could still invest in yourself because it's this investment of time. The investment of time here and then infusing money back into your business. You could be an investor. And again, these have exponential returns, or they can have exponential returns. And you can do that because you have much more control over these two quadrants. So look, that's about all the time we've got for today. So thank you guys for tuning in. Really hope you've enjoyed the show. I hope it's helped you really understand a little bit better ways that you could get into investing. Again, even as an employee, you're investing in your future with the company. As a self-employed person, you're investing in your ability to generate and make money. As a business, you're investing in your company. You're investing in other people to help achieve that common goal. And then what most people think of as an investor is actually being an investor, actually owning real estate, actually owning something that creates some sort of cash flow, but that does it on its own, where it doesn't require as much intervention as your part. And again, before you get to that, you've really got to work through these other processes here. You've really got to get through all these. Maybe you come into a significant sum of money, maybe you inherit some money and so on and so forth. And if maybe you inherit a significant sum of money, you might be able to grow that over the long term. But if you really want to make exponential changes in a very quick amount of time, doing that as a self-employed person or as a business has that potential. It's going to take effort on your part, especially if you're trying to juggle both of these at the same time. If you're already working a full-time job, 40, 50 hours a week, I just hit that live view real quick. 40, 50 hours a week. If you're already working full-time 40, 50 hours a week, then moving into this self-employed or adding that in and supplementing what you're doing, being a self-employed entrepreneur, realtor selling properties on the nights and weekends, that's going to be more difficult than when you transition fully into doing this completely full-time. But doing that, we talked about if you're looking at starting real estate part-time, go back a couple episodes. We did one, Should I Quit My Job? And basically walking through that whole process of if you do eventually want to quit your job, how you could go about doing that, or if you don't want to quit your job or you're not ready to quit your job yet, how you could start earning money in real estate. So go back and check that one out. That'll really help walk you through that process here. But again, as an investor, there's a lot of ways to invest, but the best return on your investment is investment in people, either in yourself here or investment in other people to help you grow a business that becomes bigger than yourself. So look, that's all the time we've got for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you like the show, make sure you hit the like button and hit that little bell icon so whenever it is that we go live, you get notifications so you don't miss out on any of this great content that we put out every single day. If you've got questions, drop that in the comments, feedback for us. You wanna hate on us, go leave that in the comments. We're open to that as well. Thank you guys for tuning in, and remember to tune in on Friday at 12 noon for State of Real Estate. Hey, so if you're thinking about starting a real estate career, it could feel a little overwhelming sometimes. Look, that's completely understandable. That's why we're here to help. If you haven't already, check out our Success Center, tampaschool.com/success, or if you don't even know where to begin, give us a call. We'd love to help you out. We've got advisors standing by to answer any questions you have and assist you in any way it is that we can. Our phone number is 813-928-0106. Again, that's 813-928-0106. Give us a call. We're the Tampa School of Real Estate.
Do you want a career that allows you to be in control? With a career in real estate, you'll get to call the shots. Whether you're looking at starting part-time or want to become the next top agent, a career in real estate makes it possible. Find out what it takes at tampaschool.com. Do you want to incorporate studying for your real estate exams into your busy schedule? Now you can review the key topics you need to know to pass your class and state exams with our MP3 audio review. Simply pop in your headphones or connect to your car to reinforce crucial information while you exercise or drive. Listen to the first unit for free at mp3audioreview.com. That's mp3audioreview.com.
Are you thinking about a career in real estate? Hey, I'm John Chrisma with the Tampa School of Real Estate, and we've helped thousands of people just like you obtain their real estate license. If you're thinking about a career in real estate, give us a call. The phone number is 813-928-0106. Our advisors are standing by to answer any questions you have and assist you in any way they can. Hey, if you're enjoying the show today, which I'm sure you are, be sure to hit like, subscribe, post your comments, share with your friends and family. Thank you guys so much for watching.